Well, hello there, SPAC friends and family. It is quite a bit after 2 o'clock here on the West Coast, and it's Tuesday, so you know it must be time for SPAC chat. Running a little bit late today because we had some technical issues, but we worked it all out. Also, our host today, Calvin Harrell, might be popping in a little bit later because he's taking care of an issue with his father, Papa Harrell, who just turned 95. So a big congratulations to Papa Harrell for hitting 95. And let's get on with SPAC chat. Well, folks, the number one question that oftentimes we get here at SPAC is all about RFPs, the request for proposals. Kind of one of those things that school districts or schools themselves ask people to submit a proposal. And that always comes with a lot of questions. So today we're giving you a little warming video of a SPAC chat today, just to talk to you about some of the key terms. And then we will be following up with a detailed session at SPAC 2026 with all the details and a much bigger dive into the topic. So I'm obviously not the one that's going to explain this all to you, but we've got someone right on track who is perfect. So let me bring to the stage Mr. Barksdale, Wayne himself. So Wayne, welcome to the broadcast.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks.
Okay, so first, before I go and jump into this proposal, I just want to send some thoughts and prayers out to all of those who've been affected by the tornadoes that have blown through and some of the weather issues that we've been having. And please reach out if you need or some support from SPAC in any way. We are always here. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to get the presentation all set. I'm going to sit over in the corner. If you have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat and I will bring them to Wayne on screen so he can answer your questions. Go ahead, Wayne, take it away.
All right, lots of ground to cover. We lost a little bit about a half hour. Let's see if we can roll through this. Winning an RFP isn't about having the best product. It's really about telling the best story with somebody else's rules. So let's show you how to play the game a little bit. So from the school's perspective, this is what they put together. They determining their needs, and their needs could be elementary, middle school, high school, how they separate it. They wind up putting it together in some sort of a writing format. And in some cases, they may even borrow somebody else's RFP from another district. So that's not uncommon. So if you do a few of them, you may see some similarities between one and the other. And then you figure out how they're going to make that distribution. How are they going to get it out of there? How are they going to get it out of the district and into the hands of some of those school photographers that may be interested? And then, of course, from the school's perspective, they come up with some evaluating, and then they reevaluate it, and then, of course, they make that decision. And in this time frame, it could be anywhere from days, or it could be weeks or months. That could take that long to do that. So how do I get on the list? How do I know if that school district is even an RFP? Well, it probably starts at a building level first, and then you hear that from that secretary that tells you, no, none of the buildings make their own decision, and it is through the district. So in that case, you would call the district, get yourself on that list, give them the name of your business, maybe a letterhead of what you might be interested in doing, maybe a little bit about your business, and then from there. The next slide is going to tell us a little bit about if you have a bid, where do you go from here? Because if you've never seen one and you do get one in your hands, they can get kind of complicated. Like, where do I go? Where do I start? So that's how we'll talk a little bit about today. So what's important in an RFP is, number one is the due date. When is it due? Now, if you notice, what I shared with you is an older one, but it's the due date you're looking for. So from there is, who's the current vendor? In most states, there is a right to know. You might want to check your local state laws, but you could ask the district, who is the vendor and what was the winning proposal? That's really a good start if you can get that. It kind of helps you not play chess in the dark and you're not competing against yourself. So at least you have some information about who won and what was the winning pricing. It's about all you'll get is the pricing. And then what's the evaluation criteria? In some of them, it's really about pricing. They'll give you a weighted percentage on that. The services and products, they'll also tell you a little bit about what's the weight on that and the materials and supplies that you're using, and that your qualifications and the ability for you to perform, whether it's you've been in business 5 years, you've been in seven years, 10 years, 50 years. And then what other value added services that you provide to the district. And then the scope of work is high school, middle school, elementary. That's typically the scope of the work. And then if you notice, I put bond in there. That's kind of a little old school, but now could be a certified check that you have to write to the school district, and it is held in the event that you win, and it's held with the district in the event that something were to go wrong and parents probably didn't get their money. They would use that bond or certified check for that services. And then, of course, the number of copies that are required. Both paper and digital. We're seeing more digital than paper, but it's still there. One original and some 10 copies, as you can see what I posted on the screen. And then some questions. What are the deadlines? Is there an addendum? And kind of keep this in mind. If one vendor does ask questions, it is required that they post that on the school's website as an addendum. And then, is there presentation opportunities? And you want that. You really want that. Remember, winning the bid isn't about having the best product. It's really about telling a story with their rules, which becomes a little bit more challenging. And then in some RFPs, there is a formal opening where you're invited to go there. It could be 1 o'clock, it could be 2 o'clock, it could be 11 o'clock. And then there's a readout of all the vendors that are there that participated in this. And typically what they do is they read out the pricing. And the style of the bid is it one vendor wins all, or are they going to award it to multiple awards? And what do you mean by that? If it's an elementary, middle school, and then a high school, and then senior portraits, you could literally have 3 different vendors in that. Now, we don't see that often anymore, but we do see them separate the senior portraits versus the middle school, the high school, and the elementary. So it could be multiple. And you could bid sometimes on just one style if you're interested in that. And then, of course, there in certain parts of the country, it isn't winner take all. You become an approved vendor where the school district has done all the vetting to make sure that you're insured right, you have the right pricing that they're looking for. And you don't necessarily all have to have the same pricing, but they do all the vetting for you. And at that point, you're an approved vendor. And then, of course, it starts all over again. You would have to go to each school, sell them your services, and make your presentation. And what I have here, Corey, I don't know if you can link, I don't think you're going to be able to link this to here, but this is a bookshelf link that it kind of gives you a sense of what an RFP looks like. This particular one, it was out of Virginia. It's probably 27 or 28 different pages. And then inside that document, there are 4 or 5 crucial documents that either have to be notarized or need your signature. And I'd like to, in all the years that I've been doing RFPs, the simplest form for me and some advice to anybody that wants to jump into the RFP arena is try to break it up into 5 different categories. You have your scope of services, you have supplied forms, you have your packaging and pricing along with commissions. Obviously, you want to give them some samples of your work, and then your final RFP proposal for submission. And then here's the first scope of services, like I've mentioned earlier. They weigh them. I have not found many RFPs that don't give you a criteria of what you're looking for. So in most cases, it's heavily weighted on the pricing end of it. And then, of course, it's quality of services, value-added services, materials and supplies, and sometimes your references are a strong component to this equation. And then understanding this section is critical. Not understanding it and and answering something incorrectly, I don't want to say disqualify you, but you would be disqualified, not knowing the gist of what they're looking for. Important. Make sure you satisfy all the requests. And you can do that. And these are some of the requests. So you make sure you're initialing everything that the school district is asking you, that you've agreed to it. And then on some of the general requirements, we do answer it as agreed. And then if something is we need a little bit more than just agreed, we add that in that highlighted section. And then the products and services offered in that section may set you apart from the competition. And then here, you want to make sure you've already gave them who the dream team is. You've talked to some of the key personnel that may be involved in this RFP if you win. I think it's important to share that with the district. And then, of course, making sure that you're signing all the forms, making sure all the forms are in there. Although it's kind of old-fashioned in terms of a notary, it's still a primary way of telling the district that you are the person in charge and somebody else has kind of agreed that you are who you are. And I would want to say always sign it in blue ink. Every once in a while, you do see that they want a wet signature, and a blue ink doesn't change color in copies. So that's what you're looking for. And that's for your original. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to be notarized. In most cases, we've done 74, 75 RFPs this season. And I would say that half of them require a document to be notarized. And you want to acquaint yourself to somebody if you've never done that before. Easy to find. Google notary in your local area. There's a small fee to do that. And then these are some of the forms that you will see in an RFP. And unfortunately, there isn't really a standard. I can't tell you that 5 or 7 forms that I'm sharing with you will be in all of the RFPs, because they're not. I mean, we've seen some RFPs that are 2-page documents, and that's it. Different states require different things. The most common ones are the ones that I added in today's presentation. The non-collusional declaration is one that you've not coerced other people to lock in the price and make it different. So that's a collusion form. And then in LA, there's a couple other forms that you see in certain parts of the country. It's a disabled veteran enterprise program. Don't ask me why, but it's there. There's another one in New Jersey that's from Iran. Like, I don't even know what that means, but it's in the form. Here's a workman's comp certificate that in some cases you have to supply. And in some cases, here's the Iran Divestment Act 2012. Don't know why it's there, but it appears to be in New Jersey all the time. And then one of the things that we like to do, which I think is smart business, is to kind of get a sense of what the RFP is worth. Is it worth your while to do it? Now, on this particular one, the enrollment was about 9,000, almost 10,000 students. In the area that we thought this RFP was in, we said it was a 65% participation rate. Maybe the RFP has, when you've done all your pricing, it has an average packet value of $20. And the potential value for the fall pictures is $129,000. Now, you in your own business have to decide whether that is lucrative enough for you or not. And once again, it's for the fall. So there's also a spring involved. And I did at the very bottom of there under elementary, there are some other selling deep opportunities for you, as well as the middle school in the sports section or the yearbook. And then you can see what we've done in the high school. You've got seniors, you've got commencement, you've got sports, and you got proms. So 129.2 is really just the fall. So you make that determining factor whether you want it, whether you can make any money doing that, because there's the cost of photography, there's travel, there's your lab cost. So,
Wayne, I have a quick question.
Sure.
How often is the yearbooks covered in these RFPs, or is that a separate RFP business?
From the RFPs that we saw this year, I would say that 65% of them are included in the elementary. The high school, we rarely see a high school yearbook included in that. I think the bigger box stores pick up those. It's the Jostens, the Herff Jones, the Wadsworth. They're in there already. And typically that doesn't usually go out for an RFP, not at the same level as an elementary or a middle, or even the underclass at the high school. But it's a good question. And then you're looking for your research in your school, your enrollment, your county medium household. Once again, here's some ranking. How does the price rank in the importance of the bid evaluation? And there are some bids that are lowest price, and how you can determine if the RFP that you have your hands on is lowest price. It's usually just one package that you're bidding on. That doesn't mean you can't offer more than one, but it's just the one that they're evaluating. Schools are looking for commission, which I would say 99.9% of the RFPs that we're doing are looking for commission. And not only are they looking for commission, they're looking for other incentives that would set you apart from the rest of the competitors. And then are there any other incentives that you might want to offer, as I mentioned, to set yourself apart? And there's a variety of them. Depends how much you want that school district. Depends the value of it. And then, is your pricing tax inclusive or exclusive? That can make a difference. And what I mean by inclusive is your packages that you put together included tax and then you pay the tax as a company, or is it exclusive and then on your shopping cart you're adding whatever that rate is per state? Something to think about. And then, of course, in your RFP, you're putting samples of your work, your portraits, a variety of samples for each level. I wouldn't overdo it. They're asking you not to overdo it. In some cases, they're just looking for one complete set. They may ask for multiple RFP responses, but they're asking for one set of samples. Leave the coffee mugs, leave the pens behind. Don't send any of those items with you. And in some cases, the RFP will tell you that. Don't send any of your marketing materials, pens, pads, calendars. Don't send that. They're just interested in your services. Like here's an example of, here's our product and service brochure that we include. Here's a little bit of what we do on the ID cards. It's simple, it's clean. It describes our products and services. And then be prepared to give a presentation at that final step in the winning bid. And then here's how we answer some of our RFPs. We make sure that everything is signed or initialed. If we needed to add another component of a clarification, and maybe there's a different thing that we do. Great example is we just did an RFP. They were looking for 5 2x3s. We don't print 5 2x3s. We print 8. So we'll initial it and then put a disclaimer on that RFP, our large wallets are 8 rather than 5. And then, of course, on the right-hand side of some of the highlighted areas where we acknowledge we've read it, we understand it. There's a little bit of a difference in here. So we indicate what the differences could be. And then, of course, my signature, make sure your signature is on all documents. And this is just, once again, telling you how many copies. It's all in the RFP. I would encourage you to read the RFP over and over and over and over again, even before you start to answer it. I think it makes more sense. There are times that you may catch something the second or third or even the fourth time. And if you're unsure of what they're asking, there is a time that you can ask some questions about it. But you want to pay attention to when that deadline is to ask questions. Because if you get beyond the questions or the deadline, you're on your own. You'll have to guess of what you think they're asking. And then, of course, making sure that you're addressing the package exactly and stated included in the RFP. In some cases, they want you even to label it as a P22RM370. That's the RFP. They want you to indicate what the title is, and then where's the procurement division and where is it going. It's important that you do that. Have somebody else check it, have somebody else reread where it's going to be sent. There is no wiggle room if they ask you to get it there by 2 o'clock and you miss the deadline. You'll be out of the bid. And speaking from experience, we've missed some deadlines. It does happen. And this tells you when it's due, what's the date it's due. If you have any additional questions, they won't pick up the phone and answer any of the questions. Most of the questions will be done through email. And then once again, as I said earlier, if you do have a couple questions, they will be sent out to as an addendum to everybody else on the RFP, not just you. The other words of wisdom is don't call your school. Don't call the schools in that district. Once it becomes an RFP, it could get you disqualified. So stay out of that. Proposal should always be a sealed envelope from everything else. We kind of separate them. The proposal is all by itself, and then all the marketing materials that support that proposal is in a separate box so they can see the documents, because they're the most critical of the documents. The dates, you don't want anybody opening that envelope before it happens. Not that you would even know it was open. You don't get the chance to see it. Now, this is all kind of under the hood stuff. This is when a school district does not have an open bid. This is something that happens more now since COVID than ever before. I would say over the 70 some odd RFPs, there's only been 3 that we could actually attend to watch them, open them up, address who this is from, and then read the pricing. And that's pretty much all you'll get out of it, is just reading the pricing. And at times, if there's enough time, they'll allow you to come up to the table and flip a few pages just to see what the competitors are doing. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And then, of course, keep a copy for yourself. And then once again, this is a link. Penny, Corey, you might be able to open that link, since I don't know if you can click on that link.
I can, but if you would send it to me after the broadcast, I will go ahead and post that link in the comment section of this video. All of our videos are stored here.
So for the viewers, it would give you an idea of what an RFP looks like, right? It would give you a good sense of what that looks like as a book fashion. I would keep it as simple and clean and professional as you can. On this particular one, your sales representative is on the front. When you open it up, there could be a letter from you, the business owner, about your history, who you are, why you're the better choice. And then the rest of it is filled with the documents that they supplied you, that you've initialed, that have to be included. And then from there, it becomes more of you. It's kind of a soft sell of who you are and what you do differently. And then from this stage, I think I popped it in here. Review the components of the RFP. This is kind of recapping a little bit. Review the prospective requirements. Once again, it's so important that you're checking once, you're checking twice, you're checking 3 times, because once it leaves your building, you're done. You're finished with it. You'd hate to lose it because you missed something. It happens. I wouldn't get discouraged, but it does happen. They're complicated. Some cases they're not so, where there's a page or a 2-page, but typically they're at least 12 to 15 to 20 pages deep. So make sure you're responding to everything. Create a proposal, if you mention, be prepared to present that proposal. And as I kind of went through here, this is kind of a recap of what we just talked about. It could take you about 10 days to 2 weeks to put it together. It's not something that you're going to be able to do overnight if you had very little experience. And even with some of the experience that we have, it takes us 3 or 4 days, maybe not to compile it. We can compile it in maybe 3 or 4 hours, but by the time we're finished and it gets to my desk and we have a few other people review it, it's a week. So take your time. I would encourage you to exercise your right to know, look at your state rules, get in touch with the school district. I will advise you that if you do ask for the right to know, I would make sure you're way in front of when it's due, because there are times that they won't get the right to know out fast enough. So you're still flying blind. So I would make sure that you read it, see when it's due, get your questions, get your right to know out at front so you know what you're up against. And then be prepared if they don't answer the right to know in time, already have a plan in front, because your date could expire. Once again, read the RFP within the time frame, get your questions formulated. I wouldn't hit him with one question and hit him again. Stop, think, and roll with it. Ask all of your questions at one time. And then there's another system that we use called niche.com that kind of gives us a sense, does the school district, does it have a rating? And niche rates them by A+, A-, B+, and so on. And it might give you a better barometer if you're new to the area. And in most cases, you're not. Maybe this is a local district that you've always wanted to go after, but you've always been concerned about it was an RFP and I don't know where to start. I'm a little uncomfortable putting it all together. This, as Corey mentioned, this is just to whet your appetite a little bit. We'll do a deeper dive with some handouts and walk you through the ways to get around it. And then, of course, plan ahead if the RFP needs to be delivered in a rural area, because if you're waiting till the last minute, you may have to overnight that RFP to that area. And then you might want to check your UPS in terms of where that's going. Will it take 2 days to get there? And I will tell you, retain a copy of it. But more importantly, when do these RFPs come out? And these RFPs come out in December, January, February, March, April. We're in May, and we're still seeing a few, not a lot. You'll still see them in June. But what happens in June and May, it takes the school district a little longer to make the decision. And when that does that, your calendar is filled up. Your time frame of when you hear it to go hire more photographers becomes more challenging. So know the pitfalls, know what happens. You could recover from it, but know that most cases they're in December, January, February, March, and April. That's when they come out. That's the bulk of them. So, and that kind of gives you a snapshot of an RFP in a very, very abbreviated in a half hour's worth of time capsule. And like I said, as Corey mentioned, get the SPAC in January. Corey, you have the dates. We'll do the deep dive for you. We'll be able to field the questions. We'll be able to make you feel comfortable. Now, does that mean you win them all? No, but you can't win unless you try. So
right. And SPAC is all about education, and we want to help educate all of our business owners out there on all these processes. And Wayne is the go-to guy, and he will be having a full 90-minute session at SPAC 2026, doing a deep dive on this. I'm sure there'll be some breakouts in the rooms to kind of practice some of the questions and answers. I'm sure it'll all be put together. But again, we wanted to whet your appetite because we're getting lots of questions. So Wayne, you see most of RFPs are like December, January, February, would you say?
I would say the bulk of them come in February, March, April. And we believe the reason for that is, most schools or school districts are concerned about telling the vendor that they don't want to use them anymore. So they wait as long as they can. That's one. The other is, maybe the RFP in the previous years has run out. They're 1-year terms. sometimes 1-year terms with an additional year extension up to 3 years. We've seen 3-year terms with 2 additional 1-year extensions, and we've seen 5-year RFPs with 2-year of additional yearly extension. So they're up to 7 years. So if you've never been in the field before looking for RFPs, this could be your opportunity to see an RFP that has expired in terms of it's ran its 3-year, or it's ran its 1 year with the 2-year extensions, or it's ran its 3-year with a 2-year of extensions, which is 5, or it's just run its 3-year extension with no more additional extensions. And I caution you, when you see that, it's important to see that right to know if you can get that, because they can make their decision just based on dollars and cents. They can make their decision based on 25 cents less on a bid package. Doesn't always happen that way, but it is there. But we have seen some of the larger organizations in the bid process get more aggressive in pricing. So be careful. You're not going to win that RFP if you're not willing to come down in price. You're not going to win that. You're just kind of wasting your time. If you're not willing to come down into that $12, $11, $10, $9 bottom end package, the chances are you will not win that if you're new to the RFP. Now, if you're the incumbent there, that's a different story. But if you're not the incumbent in that RFP, the chances are price may not be the only factor, but it's a good factor. And I've not seen many school districts that are used to paying $9 or $10 or $12 for a low-end package flip into another company that's charging $17, $18, $19. I don't see that. That doesn't mean it can't happen. I just haven't seen it. So there's plenty of opportunity for you to do that.
Wayne, I know that Barksdale is nationwide. Would you say that most school districts are doing RFPs, or are there still pockets of schools doing their own RFPs? What would you say the percentages in that are?
I think it ranges. We were just talking about it the other day. Every state is a little different. You know, like we don't see many RFPs in the state of Delaware. We see a ton of them in Texas. We don't service Texas. We see quite a few in Missouri. We don't see that many in the California market. We do see some, but we don't see a lot. In the areas that we handle, we see some in Indiana. Kentucky seems to be a real high RFP area. We see certain parts of New England, and I'll group New England. Clear definition, New England is more than one state, but there's different pockets of New England that have more density of RFPs. Like Rhode Island doesn't have many RFPs. So it's hard to answer it. I think there are still plenty of opportunities for the independent thinking schools not to go RFP. They're great if you win them, Corey, and they're disastrous when you don't, because when you don't win them, you're out of 10 schools, 15 schools, 20 schools. And if you do win them, God bless you. But I think to answer your question, Corey, it varies from state to state. And I don't have any statistics to say one state is more concentrated on them, other than I think Texas probably has the most.
So do your homework.
Yeah, for sure. Or spin the wheel. Do an RFP. It won't hurt you. And I think over the years, Corey, we've seen other smaller independents through SPAC make a presentation, and they've done a few. I don't know the outcome if they win, and you're not going to win them all. I mean, we probably win maybe 10 to 12% of what we put together. So, you know, go in there with the right mind, get used to what it looks like. You'll get better at them with time. As I mentioned earlier, you don't have to be the best. You do have to be ready for a good presentation, because I think that will win it. Over the years that we've been doing them, I think it's the presentation that wins the deal. And I see Neil is kind of agreeing. Neil from Strawbridge, that's at Texas, And, Virginia is another one that he mentioned for sure. I think Neil and I are both in some of those areas. We don't do anything in Texas, but Kentucky and Virginia, I would agree. But in those areas, and Neil maybe could speak to it much better than I could. Hopefully he'll be at SPAC and he'll attend that RFP. Not all of them are winner take all. We're seeing more and more of it's an approved vendor, and now you just got to go out and put your best foot forward. Which is even more important, that you better have a good presentation.
Well, fantastic. I appreciate your time today, Wayne, and your work on this and your ongoing work on helping educate our community. Knowledge is power, as we always say, and there are no stupid questions at SPAC. We want everybody to get the right answers. So I thank you again for your time. Again, thoughts and prayers out to all of those people who have been affected by the tornadoes and this crazy weather. And happy birthday to Papa Harrell. And I will make sure he gets that message. And we will be back next week at 2 o'clock. It is Michael Rack's turn with OPP, Original Portrait Photographers. I don't know who he's going to be interviewing, but it's going to be one of the OGs in the industry. I'm sure it's always fun to hear those stories. Thanks again, Wayne. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you have any follow-up questions or anything, you can always send us an email at SPAC, and I will get a message. And I thank you all for your time today. Have a great Tuesday. Bye, everybody.